Well, I was, because it's opening another chapter in my life, and certainly William's, but he's ready for it. He's a very independent child. He's surrounded by a tremendous amount of grown-ups, so his conversation's very forthright. And as you saw, he's more than happy to go down those steps and join the other children. We do see a lot of children.
Written just months before her tragic death in Paris, Diana made a desperate plea that Anne never expected. What she predicted has now come true in ways that seem almost impossible. The letter's contents are so shocking, they've left the royal family speechless. This is the lost message Diana never wanted the world to forget. The letters themselves were remarkable. They included heartfelt thank you notes to charity workers, warm messages to friends, and expressions of gratitude to people who had supported her during difficult times.
Well, for years I didn't really appreciate Royal Ascot, almost in any shape or form, and I eventually worked out that it is probably some of the best racing you see, flat racing you see in Britain, and certainly in a week. So I have since really enjoyed going, particularly, oddly enough, the first day's racing, but also that Thursday day, the Gold Cup day's racing.
Each one offered a glimpse into Diana's character, showing her kindness and genuine care for others. But among these already significant pieces of correspondence, one envelope stood out from the rest. It was addressed to Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, and only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II. What made this particular letter so unusual was that it had never been opened. For more than 26 years, it had remained sealed, its contents a complete mystery. The envelope itself was elegant, yet simple. Made from delicate cream-colored paper, it bore Diana's royal letterhead from Kensington Palace. Her distinctive handwriting was still clearly visible, looking as fresh as the day she had written it. The discovery quickly attracted attention from royal experts, historians, and anyone interested in the British royal family. News spread rapidly through academic circles and among those who had spent years studying Diana's life and legacy. Dr. Sarah Matthews, a respected historian who had dedicated much of her career to examining Diana's correspondence, was among the first experts to arrive in Essex. She had analysed countless letters written by Diana over the years, studying everything from her choice of words to the way her handwriting changed during different periods of her life. But when Matthews examined this newly discovered envelope, she immediately noticed something unusual. Unlike other letters that showed signs of age, with faded ink and worn edges from being handled multiple times, this one appeared to be in pristine condition. The paper had not yellowed significantly, and there were no creases or tears that typically come from years of storage. The journey of this letter added another layer of mystery to the story. According to records that Parker had managed to trace, the envelope had passed through the hands of 3 different owners since Diana's death. Yet somehow, none of them had ever broken the seal. The most recent owner was a retired banker named Thomas Henderson, who had purchased the letter in 2001 from someone who wished to remain anonymous. This anonymous seller had apparently worked closely with the royal family at some point, though their exact role was never revealed. Henderson kept the letter in a safe deposit box for over 2 decades, never once attempting to open it. When asked why he had chosen to sell it now, Henderson simply stated that he felt it was time for the letter to be properly examined and preserved. As experts continued their examination of the envelope, they made another discovery that deepened the intrigue. Along the seal was a small impression in red wax, bearing what appeared to be Diana's personal crest. This was not the standard royal seal that she typically used for official correspondence. Instead, it was a mark she reserved exclusively for her most private and important messages. The presence of this particular seal indicated that whatever Diana had written inside carried significant weight. It was not a casual note or a simple thank you letter. This was something she had considered deeply important. When the letter was finally opened under carefully controlled conditions, with conservators present to ensure its preservation, the contents proved to be even more remarkable than anyone had anticipated. Diana had written it in early 1997, during the final months of her life, and just a few months before the car crash in Paris that would claim her life on August 31st of that year. The tone of the letter was notably different from some of her other writings from that period. While several of her letters from 1997 reflected frustration with her situation or sadness about her failed marriage, this particular letter was calm, measured, and thoughtful. In the letter, Diana wrote about the British royal family and the changes she believed were inevitable. She discussed how the monarchy would need to adapt to modern times, how the influence of media would continue to grow stronger, and how these forces would likely affect her two young sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Her predictions were specific and detailed, touching on issues that at the time seemed unlikely or even impossible to many observers. Yet, from today's perspective, many of her observations appear remarkably accurate. The most surprising aspect of the letter was Diana's choice of recipient. Princess Anne had never been particularly close to Diana. Their relationship throughout Diana's time as a working royal had been polite but distant. They represented two very different approaches to royal life. Anne was known for her unwavering dedication to duty, her preference for staying out of the spotlight, and her belief in traditional royal protocols. Diana, on the other hand, had become famous for her emotional openness, her willingness to break with convention, and her natural ability to connect with ordinary people. Despite their differences and their lack of closeness, Diana's letter to Anne expressed deep respect and understanding. She acknowledged that they had approached royal life in fundamentally different ways, but she praised Anne's strength, her loyalty to the crown, and her consistent dedication to her responsibilities. Then Diana made a request that surprised everyone who read the letter. She asked Anne to look after William and Harry if anything should happen to her. This was not a casual favor between family members. It was a serious appeal, one that suggested Diana had genuine concerns about her own safety and her son's future. The timing of this letter makes it particularly significant. In early 1997, Diana had become deeply involved in humanitarian work, with a special focus on the international campaign to ban landmines. Her visit to Angola in January of that year, where she famously walked through an active minefield wearing protective gear, had generated worldwide attention. The images of Diana in a visor and body armor, surrounded by warning signs about unexploded mines, became some of the most iconic photographs of her later years. However, this work had also made her controversial in certain circles. Some politicians and military figures were unhappy with her activism, viewing it as inappropriate interference in political matters. The letter discovered in Essex was not an isolated piece of correspondence. It was part of a broader pattern that emerged during the spring and early summer of 1997, when people close to Princess Diana began noticing significant changes in her behavior. Her personal secretary observed that Diana had become more focused on writing letters than usual. While she had always been a thoughtful correspondent, known for sending personal notes to people who had helped her or shown kindness, something about her approach had shifted. The elegant, carefully crafted handwriting that had always characterized her correspondence now appeared more urgent, almost rushed at times. Ken Williams, who served as one of Diana's royal protection officers during those final months, later recalled how she would often stay up late into the night, sitting at her desk and writing letter after letter. On several occasions, Williams arrived for his early morning shift to find Diana still awake, surrounded by sealed envelopes. These were not the cheerful thank you notes or friendly updates that she typically sent to charities and acquaintances. The letters she was writing during this period carried a different weight. They seemed more serious, more deliberate, as if she was trying to document important information or leave behind crucial instructions. Paul Burrell, who served as Diana's butler and had previously worked for Queen Elizabeth II, received one of these letters. Burrell had a unique perspective on royal life, having spent 2 decades working within the palace system before becoming part of Diana's personal household. The letter Diana sent to him contained references to what she described as dark forces surrounding her. While Burrell has been careful about revealing specific details over the years, he has confirmed that Diana expressed concerns about her safety and mentioned feeling watched or monitored. The letter suggested that she believed certain powerful individuals wanted her to remain silent about issues she cared about. Another letter went to Lucia Fletcher de Lima, a close friend who had been a source of support for Diana during some of her most difficult times. Fletcher de Lima was the wife of a Brazilian diplomat, and she had known Diana since the early 1992s. Their friendship had deepened over the years, with Diana often confiding in Lucia about her struggles within the royal family and her search for a meaningful role outside of palace life. The letter Diana sent to Lucia contained what Lucia later described as chilling references to powerful people who wanted Diana to stop her humanitarian work and public advocacy. The letter to Princess Anne, however, was distinctly different from these other pieces of correspondence. It was written on Diana's personal Kensington Palace stationery, with the official letterhead clearly visible at the top of the page. But unlike the worried or anxious tone of some of her other letters from that period, this one revealed a more reflective and forward-thinking side of Diana. She wrote about the British monarchy as an institution that would need to change with the times. She discussed how the old traditions and rigid protocols that had governed royal life for generations were beginning to crumble under the pressure of modern media attention and changing public expectations. Diana expressed particular concern about her sons and the world they would inherit. She wrote about William, who was then 15 years old and already being groomed for his future role as king. She also wrote about Harry, who was just 12 and struggling with the constant media attention that followed him everywhere. Diana believed that both boys would need the freedom to find their own paths, to make their own choices, even if those choices conflicted with traditional royal expectations. This was a radical idea at the time, especially coming from someone who had experienced firsthand how unforgiving the royal system could be toward those who stepped out of line. Patrick Jepson, who served as Diana's private secretary from 1988 to 1996, later provided context for why Diana might have chosen to write to Anne specifically. According to Jepson, Diana had been quietly observing Princess Anne for years. Despite their personal differences and the distance that had characterized their relationship, Diana had developed a respect for Anne's ability to navigate royal life on her own terms. Anne had managed to maintain her independence and authenticity while still fulfilling her duties to the crown. She attended hundreds of official engagements each year, more than almost any other royal family member, yet she avoided the intense media scrutiny that followed Diana. Anne had learned how to be true to herself while operating within the constraints of royal protocol, and Diana recognized this as a valuable skill. In her letter, Diana demonstrated a clear understanding of the specific challenges that William and Harry would face as they grew older. She wrote about the rigid expectations that would be placed on them, the constant pressure to appear perfect in public, and the relentless media attention that would follow their heirs' every move. These were not abstract concerns or the general worries of an anxious mother. They were detailed observations from someone who had lived through these exact experiences and understood the psychological toll they could take. Diana knew what it felt like to have every outfit analyzed, every word scrutinized, and every emotional moment captured and dissected by newspapers and television programs. Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's older sister, later confirmed that Diana had expressed similar fears to her own family during the months before her death. Sarah revealed that Diana believed change was coming to the monarchy, whether the institution was ready for it or not. She worried that her sons would find themselves caught in the middle of this transformation, pulled between the demands of tradition and the realities of the modern world. Diana feared that without support and understanding from within the royal family, William and Harry might struggle to find their place. What made Diana's request to Anne particularly unusual was its nature. Diana was not asking for traditional protection or formal guardianship. She was not requesting that Anne take custody of the boys or assume any official role in their upbringing. Instead, Diana was asking for something more subtle and perhaps more important. She wanted Anne to be there for William and Harry as they navigated the complexities of royal life. She wanted someone who understood the pressures and demands of being a working royal to help her sons maintain their sense of self while fulfilling their duties. In many ways, Anne seemed like an ideal choice for this role. She had successfully carved out her own identity within the royal family, maintaining her independence and privacy while still earning respect for her tireless work ethic. The letter also touched on Diana's humanitarian work, which had become increasingly important to her in the final years of her life. She wrote about her trips to Angola and Bosnia, where she had seen firsthand the devastating impact of landmines on civilian populations. Walking through those minefields and meeting people who had lost limbs or loved ones to these weapons had given Diana a sense of purpose that went far beyond her role as a princess. She described this work as meaningful in a way that royal ceremonies and official engagements had never been. For the first time in her adult life, she felt like she was making a real difference in the world. However, Diana was also aware that her activism had made her controversial and possibly even vulnerable. By stepping into political issues like the international arms trade and landmine production, she had angered powerful figures in government and industry. Jenny Bond, who covered the royal family for the BBC during this period, later reflected on how significant this moment was in Diana's life. In early 1997, Diana found herself at a crossroads. She had lost her official royal title following her divorce from Prince Charles, but she had gained something potentially more valuable, which was her own independent voice and platform. She was no longer just a princess fulfilling ceremonial duties. She had become a global advocate for causes she cared about deeply. In the letter to Anne, Diana acknowledged that she felt watched and monitored. She mentioned noticing cars that seemed to follow her and experiencing strange occurrences during phone conversations, such as unexplained clicks or brief silences that suggested someone might be listening. Yet despite these concerns, her words did not convey fear or panic. Instead, the letter carried the tone of someone who was being practical and prepared. Diana was not predicting her own death or making dramatic pronouncements about danger. She was simply taking reasonable precautions, making sure that if something unexpected happened, there would be people who understood her wishes and could support her children. The closing words of Diana's letter to Anne focused not on her worries or the challenges facing the royal family, but on hope. She wrote about her belief that the monarchy could evolve and adapt to changing times. She expressed optimism that her sons could find happiness and fulfillment, even within the constraints of royal life. She also suggested that relationships within the family, even those that had been distant or strained, had the potential to grow stronger and more meaningful. Diana ended the letter not as a princess writing to another senior royal, but as a mother reaching out to someone she believed could help protect what mattered most to her, which was the well-being and future of William and Harry. At the bottom of the page, she added a brief but powerful postscript that read simply, "Time will prove me right." Looking back from today's perspective, those words seem remarkably prescient, as many of the changes and challenges Diana predicted have indeed come to pass. During the early 1982, life inside Buckingham Palace was governed by centuries of tradition and unspoken rules that everyone was expected to follow without question. Princess Anne, the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, had grown up within this system and understood it completely. She had spent her entire life preparing for her role as a working member of the royal family, and she took her responsibilities seriously. Anne's approach to royal duty was straightforward and unwavering. She attended hundreds of official engagements every year, from charity events to military ceremonies, from state dinners to hospital openings. Her work was important and demanding, yet it rarely generated the kind of media attention that other royals received. Lady Pamela Hicks, who was closely connected to the royal family through her relationship with Prince Philip, often spoke admiringly of Anne's dedication. She recalled how Anne would begin her days early, carefully reviewing briefing documents and preparing for whatever events were scheduled. Anne would travel extensively throughout Britain and abroad, meeting with world leaders, supporting charitable organizations, and representing the crown at important occasions. Yet despite the volume and significance of her work, Anne never sought recognition or praise. To her, fulfilling these duties was simply part of being a member of the royal family. It was what she had been born to do, and she did it without complaint or fanfare. Then, in 1981, everything changed with the arrival of Diana Spencer. The young woman who married Prince Charles brought something entirely new to the royal family. Diana had a natural warmth and an instinctive ability to connect with people that set her apart from other royals. While Anne maintained a professional distance and followed protocol carefully, Diana seemed to operate on emotion and instinct. She would break traditional rules by hugging children during official visits, showing genuine tears when moved by something she witnessed, and displaying affection openly in ways that previous generations of royals had avoided. James Whittaker, a royal reporter who covered the family extensively during this period, observed how dramatically the media landscape shifted once Diana entered the picture. Suddenly, Anne's steady and reliable work, which included opening hospitals, visiting schools, and supporting numerous charities, received minimal coverage in newspapers and on television. Instead, every move Diana made became front-page news. If she wore a new dress or changed her hairstyle, it would dominate headlines for days. If she visited a hospice or attended a charity event, the focus was not on the cause itself, but on Diana's emotional response and personal style. Behind the carefully staged photographs at official royal events, a subtle tension began to develop between the two women. Those who studied family photographs from this era noticed that Anne and Diana rarely stood near each other. Their interactions at public gatherings appeared polite but minimal, with brief exchanges and little warmth. The fundamental difference between them was philosophical. Anne believed in the traditional royal approach of never complaining and never explaining, maintaining dignity through silence even during difficult personal times. When Anne went through her own divorce in the early 1992s, she handled it with characteristic discretion, making no public statements and continuing her work without interruption. Diana, however, chose a completely different path. She spoke openly about her struggles with mental health, her battle with bulimia, and the difficulties she faced within her marriage. She gave interviews that revealed intimate details of her life inside the palace, making the royal family seem more human and accessible to the general public. While this approach earned Diana enormous public sympathy and support, it also challenged everything that Anne and other senior royals believed about how members of the family should conduct themselves. The real strain between Diana and Anne began in 1982 when Prince William was born. Royal tradition suggested that Anne should have been chosen as one of William's godparents. This would have been particularly appropriate since Prince Charles had already served as godfather to Anne's son, Peter Phillips, when he was born in 1977. Selecting Anne as William's godmother would have been a symbolic gesture of trust and family unity, acknowledging the bond between siblings and strengthening connections across generations of the royal family. However, Diana made a different choice. She decided to break with tradition and select godparents based on personal relationships rather than royal hierarchy. Diana chose friends who had shown her kindness and support during her difficult adjustment to royal life. People she felt genuinely close to rather than those who held senior positions within the family. This decision shocked many within palace circles. For Anne, it felt like a personal rejection, a signal that Diana did not value the traditions and protocols that Anne had devoted her life to upholding. 2 years later, when Prince Harry was born in 1984, the situation repeated itself. Once again, Diana did not choose Anne as a godmother. Instead, she selected individuals from her personal circle, people she trusted and felt comfortable with. Lady Susan Hussey, who served as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth II for decades and was deeply embedded in palace life, later revealed how much this second snub affected Anne. According to those close to the situation, Anne viewed Diana's choices not simply as a personal slight, but as a broader rejection of everything Anne represented. It seemed to suggest that Diana had no respect for duty, tradition, and the established way of doing things within the royal family. Anne's response to this second exclusion was subtle but unmistakable. On the day of Harry's christening ceremony at Windsor Castle, Anne chose not to attend. Instead, she went on a hunting trip at Gatcombe Park, her country estate in Gloucestershire. She made no public comment about her absence, and the palace offered a simple explanation about prior commitments. But to those who understood the nuances of royal protocol, the message was clear. If Diana could break with tradition when it suited her, then Anne could do the same. By prioritizing a personal activity over a significant family event, Anne was demonstrating that she too could make choices based on her own preferences rather than royal expectations. From that point forward, the distance between Diana and Anne only widened. Anne became even more committed to her royal duties, if that was possible, maintaining her grueling schedule of official engagements and avoiding any behavior that might be seen as seeking attention or breaking protocol. Diana, meanwhile, continued to develop her own identity, separate from traditional royal constraints. She found her voice through humanitarian work and used her celebrity status to draw attention to causes like AIDS awareness, homelessness, and later the campaign against landmines. At family gatherings, Christmas celebrations at Sandringham, and other occasions when the extended royal family came together, Anne and Diana maintained a polite but distant relationship. They would exchange pleasantries when necessary and pose for photographs when required, but there was no warmth or genuine connection between them. Those who observed these interactions noted that both women seemed to go out of their way to avoid extended conversations or meaningful engagement with each other. Despite their obvious differences and the tension that characterized their relationship, Diana and Anne actually had something important in common. Both women were trying to be true to themselves in an environment that placed enormous restrictions on personal expression and individual choice. The royal family had very specific expectations about how women should behave, what roles they should play, and how much independence they should claim. Both Diana and Anne were pushing against these constraints, but they were doing so in completely opposite ways. Anne's rebellion was quiet and internal. She maintained perfect adherence to protocol and tradition on the surface, while carving out spaces of autonomy in her personal life. She chose her own projects, managed her own schedule to some degree, and made decisions about her children's upbringing that sometimes differed from royal conventions. She accomplished this without fanfare or public discussion, simply by being consistent and professional in her work while maintaining firm boundaries around her private life. Diana's rebellion was far more visible and confrontational. She challenged royal expectations openly, speaking to journalists, appearing in documentaries, and using her public platform to discuss issues that the palace would have preferred to keep private. She rewrote the rules about what a princess could be, showing emotion, admitting vulnerability, and prioritizing personal authenticity over institutional loyalty. Her approach generated enormous public support but also created significant friction within the family. In the years following Diana's death, many people have wondered what might have been possible if these two women had found a way to support each other. They were both navigating the same challenging institution, dealing with similar pressures and restrictions, yet they remained isolated from each other throughout Diana's time in the royal family. The recently discovered letter suggests that toward the end of her life, Diana may have been attempting to bridge that gap, reaching out to Anne with respect and understanding despite their complicated history. Whether Anne would have responded positively to that overture remains unknown, but the letter itself represents a significant attempt at reconciliation from a woman who knew her time might be running short. When the letter written by Princess Diana to Princess Anne was finally examined in 2024, royal observers were struck by how accurately Diana had predicted the future of the monarchy and the paths her sons would take. What Diana wrote in early 1997 did not read like desperate warnings or anxious speculation. Instead, her words appeared carefully considered, as though she had looked ahead and seen exactly how events would unfold over the following decades. The letter demonstrated a level of insight that seems remarkable even now, more than 25 years after her death. Margaret Wells, who worked as a staff member and had interactions with both Diana and Anne during the 1990 seconds, shared an interesting detail about Princess Anne's response to Diana's public statements about royal reform. Wells mentioned that Anne keeps an old newspaper clipping in her study at Gatcombe Park, her private residence in Gloucestershire. The article, from August 1997, features a headline about Diana calling for significant changes within the royal family. At the time, many people dismissed Diana's comments as exaggerated or overly dramatic. Royal commentators suggested she was being unrealistic about what was possible within such an ancient institution. But looking back with the benefit of hindsight, it becomes clear that Diana understood dynamics that others had failed to recognize. Prince William, who is now second in line to the throne after his father, King Charles, has developed an approach to royal life that blends tradition with modernity in ways that would likely have pleased his mother. William has maintained respect for royal protocols and traditions while also making choices that reflect contemporary values and expectations. One of the most significant decisions he made was his choice of spouse. William married Catherine Middleton, who came from a middle-class background rather than from aristocracy or European royal families. This was precisely the kind of break from tradition that Diana had encouraged, believing that the royal family needed to connect more authentically with ordinary British citizens. The way William and Catherine are raising their 3 children also reflects Diana's vision for a more normal and emotionally healthy approach to royal childhood. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis attend regular schools rather than being educated privately at home by tutors, as many royal children were in previous generations. They participate in everyday activities, like birthday parties with school friends, sports teams, and family outings that are relatively informal. William and Catherine display physical affection with their children in public, hugging them, holding their hands, and comforting them when needed, rather than maintaining the emotional distance that characterized royal parenting in earlier eras. Graham Sterling, a former royal protection officer who worked with the family during William's teenage years and young adulthood, has spoken about Princess Anne's quiet influence on William after Diana's death. Anne never made public statements about her role in William's life or claimed any special relationship with him. However, within palace circles, it became known that Anne was one of the few senior royals who defended William when he wanted to pursue a more modern approach to his duties. During private family discussions about how William should conduct himself and what traditions he needed to uphold, Anne reportedly supported his desire to find his own way rather than simply copying what previous generations had done. Prince Harry's journey has been dramatically different from his brother's path, and this divergence also appears in Diana's letter to Anne. In 2020, Harry and his wife Meghan Markle made the unprecedented decision to step back from their roles as working members of the royal family. They moved to the United States, gave up their royal titles and patronages, and began building independent careers outside the monarchy. The decision shocked many people and generated intense media coverage and public debate. Some viewed it as a betrayal of duty and family, while others saw it as a brave choice to prioritize personal well-being over institutional obligations. However, Diana had anticipated that one of her sons might eventually choose personal freedom over royal duty. In her letter to Anne, she wrote about the immense pressure that comes with being a member of the royal family, the constant scrutiny, the loss of privacy, and the weight of public expectations. Diana suggested that this pressure could become unbearable, and she expressed understanding for anyone who might decide they could not sustain that lifestyle. She seemed to recognize that while some people are suited to royal life and can thrive within its constraints, others might need to step away in order to protect their mental health and personal happiness. Dr. Eleanor Bradford, a royal historian who has studied the evolution of the British monarchy over the past century, points out that Princess Anne's response to Harry's departure was notably measured. While several family members reportedly expressed anger or disappointment, and while some made their feelings known through carefully placed comments to journalists, Anne remained largely silent on the matter. She neither publicly supported Harry's decision nor condemned it. This neutral stance is exactly what Diana had suggested in her letter, asking Anne to provide understanding rather than judgment if either of her sons needed to make difficult choices about their futures. Diana also warned in her letter that if the monarchy failed to evolve and adapt to changing social expectations, it risked becoming irrelevant to modern Britain. She wrote about how the world was changing rapidly, how attitudes about class, privilege, and duty were shifting, and how younger generations had different expectations about transparency and authenticity from public figures. Recent events have seemed to confirm these concerns. The monarchy has faced numerous challenges in recent years, from questions about its cost to taxpayers, to debates about its role in a multicultural democracy, from scrutiny of its historical connections to colonialism, to discussions about whether hereditary privilege still makes sense in the 21st century. Many people who work within the palace system acknowledge that the institution has had to adapt in ways that would have been unthinkable 50 years ago. The royal family now engages with social media, participates in documentary films, and occasionally addresses controversies directly rather than maintaining the traditional stance of never explaining or defending. The number of working royals has decreased significantly, streamlining the institution and reducing the perception that too many distant relatives are living off public funds while performing minimal duties. Interestingly, those who know Princess Anne well say she has undergone subtle changes since Diana's death, though Anne herself would never discuss this publicly. Anne remains as dedicated and serious about her royal duties as she has always been, continuing to maintain one of the busiest schedules of any family member despite being in her 70s. However, she has played a role in the modernization efforts that have reshaped the monarchy over the past 2 decades. Anne supported the decision to reduce the number of working royals, creating what became known as the slimmed-down monarchy. She has also advocated for giving younger family members more freedom to make their own choices about how they fulfill their responsibilities. These adjustments to royal life mirror many of the changes that Diana had hoped to see. While Anne approached reform from within the system, working quietly to influence decisions rather than making public demands, The result has been movement in the direction Diana suggested. The monarchy today is more accessible, more emotionally open, and more willing to acknowledge its own imperfections than it was during Diana's lifetime. Whether this evolution would have happened without Diana's influence is impossible to know, but her impact on public expectations about what the royal family should be cannot be denied. The rediscovery of Diana's letter to Anne in 2024 has prompted renewed discussion about Diana's legacy and her understanding of the forces that were reshaping the monarchy. The letter demonstrates that Diana was not simply reacting emotionally to her own difficult experiences within the royal family. She was thinking strategically about long-term challenges and trying to prepare for outcomes that others had not yet imagined. Her decision to write to Anne specifically, despite their complicated relationship, suggests that Diana recognized Anne's strengths and believed she could play an important role in helping William and Harry navigate the pressures they would face. Today, as William prepares for his eventual role as king while trying to maintain a relatively normal family life, and as Harry builds a new existence outside the royal system while dealing with the complicated emotions that come from that separation, Diana's words continue to resonate. She saw both possibilities, understood why each son might choose differently, and tried to create space for both paths to be acceptable. Her letter to Anne was an attempt to ensure that no matter what choices her sons made, they would have support and understanding from within the family. The letter also serves as a reminder of Diana's remarkable ability to see beyond her immediate circumstances and think about the bigger picture. In the final months of her life, when she might have been focused entirely on her own challenges and concerns, Diana was thinking about her sons' futures, about the monarchy's survival, and about how to build bridges with family members she had not always gotten along with. The fact that she reached out to Anne, of all people, demonstrates both her pragmatism and her hope that even the most strained relationships could be transformed into something more positive and supportive. Whether Anne fully understood Diana's message at the time, or whether she came to appreciate it only later, remains a private matter. But the existence of the letter itself stands as evidence of Diana's final attempt to shape the future in ways that would protect what mattered most to her.